Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Smith, and today we're diving into a head-scratcher from Exodus 7:19. We're tackling the question, how could Israel escape the judgment of the first plague if it came upon all the land of Egypt? It's a wild one, folks. God turns the Nile into blood, and it sounds like nobody's getting a clean glass of water. So, how did the Israelites dodge this mess? Let's unpack it like a puzzle box, piece by piece, with the Bible and some sharp scholars as our guide. Buckle up because we're wading into some murky waters, pun intended. Let's start with a verse from the New Living Translation, Exodus 7:19. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, take your staff and raise your hand over the waters of Egypt, all its rivers, canals, ponds, and all the reservoirs. Turn all the water to blood. Everywhere in Egypt, the water will turn to blood, even the water stored in wooden bowls and stone pots." Picture this. The Nile, Egypt's lifeline, becomes a putrid, fish-killing mess, and even your kitchen jugs gone red. The text says this hits all the land of Egypt. So, what about the Israelites in Goshen? They're in Egypt, not chilling on a tropical island with a smoothie. How did they stay hydrated? Here's the puzzle, straight from the Big Book of Bible Difficulties. The Bible says the plagues hit all the land of Egypt. That's Exodus 7:19, 8:16, 8:24, and 9:22. But verses like Exodus 8:22 claim God spared the Israelites from certain plagues. Is this a contradiction? If all means everybody, how are the Israelites skating by? It's like a citywide blackout, somehow skipping one neighborhood. Now, here's the twist. Some scholars say the Israelites might have faced the bloody water too, since the Bible doesn't exempt them until later plagues. Others argue God spared them from the start. Let's unpack both sides and see what holds up. The Big Book of Bible Difficulties gives us a starting point. In Hebrew, all isn't always absolute. It's like saying the whole class bombed the quiz, but maybe one kid aced it. Context matters. In Exodus 8:22, God says, "I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarms of flies shall be there." In Exodus 9:6, all the livestock of Egypt died, but of the livestock of the children of Israel, not one died. God's got a pattern of shielding His people, even when the text sounds all-inclusive. So, while Exodus 7:19 doesn't say the Israelites dodged the blood plague, this precedent suggests they may have. So, why doesn't the Bible just say Goshen got a pass? It's a great question. Unlike later plagues, the first three, blood, frogs, and lice, don't mention an exemption. Biblical hermeneutics Stack Exchange argues this silence means the Israelites likely dealt with the bloody water, since Goshen was in the Nile Delta, not some gated community. Footsteps blog agrees, suggesting the first plagues hit everyone to show God's power to both Egyptians and Israelites. But Chabad.org cites Jewish traditions claiming God kept Israel's water pure. Miracle not in the text, but compelling. Let's explore how the Israelites might have escaped the worst of this. First, divine protection. God's plan in Exodus is to rescue Israel, not drown them in Egypt's misery. The plagues target Egypt's gods like Hapi and Osiris, tied to the Nile, that's Exodus 12:12. Dr. Thomas L. Constable's expository notes calls this a smackdown on these deities. The Nile was worshipped, called bringer of food, sweet of fragrance in Egyptian hymns. That's Pritchard from ancient Near Eastern texts. Now, it's a stinking disaster. Would God let his people, promised deliverance in Genesis 15:13-14, drink from that mess? Doubtful. Think of God's protection like a force field in a sci-fi flick. While Egypt's in chaos, Goshen's safe under his invisible dome. Even without explicit text, God's covenant suggests he had Israel's back. Next is geographical distinction. The Israelites lived in Goshen, a region in the northeastern Nile Delta. We see that in Genesis 45:10. Could they have had unique water sources? Exodus 7:24 says the Egyptians dug along the Nile to get drinking water, hinting groundwater was less affected. H.M. Hoyt's Medical Journal of Australia article notes Goshen was a small area near the delta's edge. So, maybe the Israelites tapped clean wells or had stored water. It's like living on the outskirts where a flood doesn't quite hit your doorstep. The plague lasted 7 days, that's Exodus 7:25, short enough for divine provision or stashed supplies to carry them through. But what if the Israelites felt some pain? Footsteps blog and thebiblesays.com suggest the first plagues hit everyone in the Delta to prove God's power. The Israelites were skeptical of Moses. We see that in Exodus 6:9. So a shared struggle might have jolted their faith, with later distinctions from the fourth plague showing God's favor. Still, as slaves, they were less tied to Egypt's Nile-dependent economy, maybe relying on different water sources, reducing their suffering. So let's pivot to a scientific angle from Vision.org's Plagued by Doubt. Epidemiologists John S. Marr and Curtis Malloy proposed the Nile's blood was a toxic algal bloom, like Pfiesteria, turning the water red and killing fish with neurotoxins. This fouled the water, sparking an ecological crisis, dead fish, bad smells, the works. Here's the kicker. Could God have used a natural event and still spared Goshen? The plague's timing, hitting when Moses struck, shows divine control, not just a bad algae day. God could have kept Goshen's wells clean, making the miracle sharper. This blends science and faith, showing God's power over nature and Egypt's gods. Now, speaking of gods, the Biblical Archaeology Society dives into the religious stakes. The Nile was linked to deities like Khnum, guardian of its sources, and Hapi, its spirit. Egyptians saw it as Osiris's bloodstream. Turning it to blood was God flexing on their belief system. The Ipuwer papyrus, an Egyptian text, mentions the Nile becoming blood and undrinkable. That's Ipuwer 2:10. Imagine the Egyptians' horror as their sacred river turned deadly. For the Israelites, this was proof their God was unmatched, whether they drank clear water or dug for it. Now, a quick linguistic note. Kevin DeYoung's sermon, And There Shall Be Blood, and C. Hauptman in Vetus Testamentum point out that Exodus 7:19's Hebrew says wood and stone, not vessels. It's likely a synecdoche, two parts standing for all water sources, like saying bread and butter for a meal. This emphasizes the plague's scope, but leaves room for God to spare Israel's private wells or stashes. Now, if God wanted to show his power to both Egypt and Israel, why not exempt the Israelites from the start? Maybe it's about building faith. The Israelites were beaten down, doubting God. We see that in Exodus 6:9. Seeing the Nile turn red might have shocked them, but experiencing protection through wells or a miracle cemented trust. By the fourth plague, when Goshen spared, it's like God saying, "See, I've got you." It's a plot twist that hits harder after the buildup. Enduring Word's commentary nails the theological angle. Each plague was a stroke against an Egyptian deity. Crocodiles, tied to gods like Sepek fled the polluted Nile. That's from Constable, who was citing Montet. Fish linked to goddesses like Neith died in droves. This wasn't just a water crisis, it was a divine takedown. For the Israelites, it proved their God outshone Egypt's idols, whether they sipped clean water or scrambled for it. So, how do we tie this together? The text's silence on Israel exemption leaves debate. Some say they suffered to learn God's power. I lean toward divine protection, based on God's promise to deliver Israel and the pattern in later plagues. Whether through clean wells, stored water, or a miracle, God likely spared them the worst. The Biblical Archaeology Society sees the plagues as a decreation, undoing Egypt's order to birth a new one for Israel. That's powerful. God's not just judging, He's remaking the world for His people. The first plague wasn't just about ruining Egypt's water. It showed who's boss. TheBibleSays.com sums it up. The plagues were about God's supremacy and Israel's deliverance. Whether the Israelites drank clean water or dug for it, they saw God crush the Nile's gods while keeping His promise. So what does this say about God? He's not just powerful, He's precise, like a surgeon's scalpel, targeting the problem while sparing His own. That's a God you can trust, even when the world's a mess. So there you have it, folks. The Israelites likely escaped through divine protection, geographical quirks, or practical workarounds, even if the text doesn't spell it out. What's a Bible question that's got you stumped? Email me at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com or comment on our Facebook page. I read everyone. If you're digging the show, drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or YouTube. It's like a high five that helps others find us. All episodes are at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com. Next Friday, we're tackling Exodus 7:20. How could Moses turn all the water to blood if the magicians had some left over to do the same trick? It's another wild ride, so don't miss it. I'm Lance Smith, wishing you good luck, good health, and God bless. So long, everybody.